Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books, and today I have a non-spoiler review for you for The Strength of the Few by James Islington. I need to cover a couple of bits of admin ground here right at the beginning of the review and let you know that while this is a non-spoiler review for the major plot details and revelations of this book, there is an aspect of the way the story that is told in this book that you kind of have to talk about in order to be able to talk about the book. So if you want to go in fully blind, I'll tell you right now that I gave this book a 4 out of 5. I had a really fantastic reading experience with it. I enjoyed basically the entire thing, and it's something that I would really recommend if you read Will of the Many and are thinking, is this a worthy sequel? Absolutely, 100% in my opinion. So let's move on. The other thing also is that if you have not read Will of the Many, there is just no way for me to discuss this book without revealing some of the plot elements of Will of the Many. So take that as you will. This is going to be as light a spoiler as I can manage of this book, but I just want you to know kind of up front that this isn't going to be my usual book reviews where I talk around everything in the book. I will have to specifically discuss a couple of plot elements. All of those plot elements are on the flap, so if you have read the blurb on the back of the book or if you read the flap, then there'll be nothing that I discuss here that you won't know. So there's your warning. Starting now, I'm going to talk about this book. Will of the Many. I've read this, I've given you this anecdote a lot of times. The original Will of the Many was a 600-ish page book, and it took me like 2 weeks to read the first 200 pages and 2 days to read page 200 to 600. The book for me was almost a DNF. And then when I got to that 200 page point, I was like, it started to intrigue me, and then I was just in. And a lot of the elements that came into the book around that time are replicated here across the entire book. The big conceit for this book is the 3 narratives. So at the end of book 1, there's like an epilogue where you find out that Olchiscore, who is Viz, the main character's adopted father, his brother, who's been thought of as dead, is actually alive in what feels like an alternative reality. And when you continue on with this book, you find that there are not just those 2 realities, there are 3. So just like the 3 pillars of the hierarchy, which I believe is that on the cover of this? Is that on the cover of this one? No, it's triangle on the cover of this one. But the triangle kind of tells you what you need to know. So you have the 3 pillars of the hierarchy, you have the Triskelion of Lucium, and you have the Ankh of Res. I've now come around really strongly on the new covers. I think that they're fantastic. I should probably put this back on so I can use it as an effective prop. Anyway, so the conceit of this book that I was alluding to when I was talking about spoilers is that we now have one protagonist split 3 ways. So the protagonist in all 3 stories is Viz Telemus, the same character from Will of the Many, but at the exact point of the Eutychium in the end of Will of the Many, he is split into 3, and a version of him is replicated across the 3 universes. So Res, which is where our story was originally set, which is where the Catenian Republic is, which is where, Viz is born, and then we also have Obtium and Lucium. So Obtium is where Cyril, Olchiscore's brother, is. It's kind of a desert post-apocalypse kind of ancient Egypt vibes, and they use a lot of terms from Egyptian mythology, which is very interesting to me. And we also have the Luceum, which is kind of Celtic themed, and in there are using a lot of terms from Celtic Irish mythology. So it's very interesting. Mike from Mike's Book Review said it was Vikings, and I was like, I'm not getting Vikings from this, because they're using Celtic language. So I was like, they must be Celtic, so they're either Scottish or Irish in terms of the language used. I'm pretty certain. So they use the term druid for druid, which, as far as I'm aware, is the Irish origin of that word. So all that to say, we have these three worlds, all three very different. So we have the original Res, the Katenna Republic, where we have all of the characters that we know and love and love to hate from book one. We then have, like I said, we have Obitium, which is kind of this desert post-apocalypse with this kind of Egyptian theme, which is on the cover. And then we also have Luceum, which is this kind of Celtic Irish, very pastoral, very kind of old Britain, pre-Roman, or kind of around Roman invasion sort of style of world. Like they talk about massive towns or something, and like they're like, oh, the town's massive, like 400 people live there, and it's like, okay, like this is that sort of society. Really, really interesting. The contrast between the three places is like a huge part of the main thrust of the book. I'm just gonna get my coffee. So yeah, we have the three different Vizes. All three Vizes have also lost an arm, which is a severe disadvantage to them in every situation. So in Res, Viz is forced to kind of fight for the place that he won in the Eutychium, in the Academy, in book one. So he's won that place, and he should be, the hero of the Republic. He should be getting everything that he wants, everything that he needs. But because he's lost this arm, people are saying like, oh, you're not as capable as you used to be. You aren't the man who won this thing. And then we have in Luceum, he is kind of brought into a world which is quite dangerous in terms of, there's like raiders, and there's a war going on, a civil war going on, and he's kind of pulled into the warrior caste, but he only has his one arm, and then in Res, he's fighting for his life in this post-apocalypse, which is patrolled by flying monsters with knives for hands. So really, really, really strong story, and I really liked the kind of situations that having that one arm put Viz in. The one caveat is it doesn't feel as much across the book as he's like learned to work around, learned to live with, and like embrace. He does kind of, but then again, that's kind of an element of like age, fantasy world, who the character is. Like, it would probably take him a lot longer to accept that. And this book is set over like a year's worth of time. He talks about like, phantom pains and things like that, which has always been something that I thought was really well done in books, and it is done well here. Character stuff is done very, very well here. One of the big issues that you have, I guess, in this book is that because we have these three stories now, there isn't as much time to spend with all of these new characters, and So whereas in book one we have an entire book, the whole book, to spend with the supporting cast, whereas in this book we have a third of the book. And one of the other consequences to that is that we don't get much time with the supporting cast from book one. So we don't get hardly any time with Lannister or with Alchiscore. We get very little time with Iden compared to book one, and those were kind of like my three favourite characters. We spend a lot of time with Equa in this book, and she was a character that I really liked in book one and wanted to see more of. So I was glad that we got to see more of her here. We certainly don't get to spend much time with Emisa either. So quite a lot of the supporting cast from book one feel very relegated to more background players, really, apart from Equa. Like, we have a couple of scenes with Iden, and some very good plot pivotal scenes with Iden, but just not enough. I have a really cool and smart expansion of the magic system in this book. So the will magic system, we kind of know quite a lot about how it works because it was being taught to Viz in book one, and then in book two we are spending more and more and more time learning about this, which I thought really worked. We then, in terms of the world building, Islington manages to, or Islington, however, whatever, he manages to genuinely really well build out these alternate worlds. So Res is like a really fully realised, functioning, or like multiple different societies in this kind of post-apocalypse, and the way that they kind of survive in this world. Really enjoyed that, really liked the way that was put together. The Lyceum, the like politics between the warring clans, and how the magic works in Lyceum, I really enjoyed that one as well. Specifically the like Nazcan challenge thingy that Viz does, I really liked that. It was very spooky, very well written. And the reunion with a certain specific character that happens in Lyceum was really well done. And while it did feel like it had been flagged across the book that it was going to happen, I still felt something when it did. So I don't want to spoil anything, and I think that if you read the book you'll probably be like, oh yeah, they're really flagging this, it's obvious this is going to happen. So yeah, and that also, there's another big plot movement which I felt was very well flagged, and which I liked, and I thought was well done. We do get some character deaths, one of which I actually thought was a bit like for shock value, not for, I don't know, didn't feel right in the moment. It's not like that took it from a 5 out of 5 to a 4 out of 5 for me, but that moment I was a bit like, ugh, that feels a bit of a like, really, you had to do that to this character, not any of the others. So yeah, you'll know what I mean when you get to it. In terms of pros and cons, really, I mean, we've talked pros already, like that. I think that this book is really well done, very well written, very enjoyable and accessible to read. The audiobook is great as well. I managed to pick up the audiobook. And finally, the cons, the one kind of thing that I wanted to talk about is that the big cons that I would say for this one are mostly around one of the three storylines kind of dragging. So at the beginning, I loved the Res storyline and kind of wasn't interested in the other two at all. Like, pretty much zero interest, which is, I think, the opposite of a lot of people. And then the other two began to pick up momentum massively, and the Res one like dropped off a cliff. I just became way less interested in the Res one from like when Viz gets into the city and beyond. Like, once he's in that section of the story, I just became way less interested. I think the characters that are surrounding him in that section of the book are not as well established as they are elsewhere, which is weird because there's less of them. But yeah, I think they're not as well established as they are elsewhere, and sadly, it just ended up meaning that I didn't connect with that world, that story, as well as I did the other two. I really came back around on the Rez story, the Katenan story. I thought that was fantastic by the end. Really enjoyed it. But anyway, have you read The Strength of the Few by James Islington? What did you think? Please let me know down below. Try and keep your spoilers to a minimum, obviously, because people might be looking at this video to get a kind of vibe of the book, if they've read the back cover and are not decided whether they want to read it right away. Yeah, just let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And are you looking forward to book 3 if you read it? The way that this book ended, I am desperate for the next book, exactly the same as I was with Strength of the Few. Thanks so much for watching. Please like the video to tell YouTube that you liked it, share it with your friends, hype it if you can, and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one with, I think Malazan Dead House Gates should be up next. Thanks so much for watching. I'll speak to you soon.